As stated before, Eclipse comes with a built-in emulator, but before we can use it, we'll need to set it up. To do so, we can either click this green play button up at the top of the Eclipse workspace, or in Eclipse, we can go to the Run As Android Application option in the Run menu. So we open that up, we'll see the Android device chooser pop open. As you can see, I don't already have an emulator set up. So what we'll need to do is click Launch a new Android virtual device, and we'll need to create one through the manager. Here we can edit, delete, or change the settings that we want on our devices that we've already created, but we'll need to create a new one now, so we'll click New. The AVD name is just the name that we give the emulator in Eclipse, because we can have multiple, all with different devices or maybe different RAM settings or different skins. I'm just going to call this Basic Phone. Here in our device drop-down menu, we have all these actual physical devices that we can model with our emulator. I'm going to choose the Nexus 7, but you can choose any one. For the target, this is the API level we want to come with the emulator when it's representing the phone. I'm going to choose the API level 19. For the skin, I'm going to choose one with the hardware controls on the emulator itself so that we have access to the back button, home button, and arrow keys. And for the RAM, I'm going to drop this down to 700. On Macs, this is fine, but on Windows, we sometimes get errors as the emulator takes up too much RAM. So we can click OK. And now in our device manager, we have our app that we just created named Basic Phone with all the information that we gave it. So we'll click out of this, and here it hasn't appeared yet. We'll need to click Refresh. And so now that emulator that we just created is now loaded up in the device chooser. So we have that selected. We'll click OK. So as we can see, as stated before, the console here is outputting a lot of information about what's happening with the emulator as it's loading up. And here we see the emulator in front of us. Now the emulator that comes with Eclipse is very slow, and as I've stated before, there are alternatives. But for now, we'll just set up the basic emulator that comes with Eclipse without any other downloads or third-party software. Up to the top right corner, we can see the hardware devices or hardware inputs that we decided to come with our emulator, such as the arrow keys and the home button. After waiting a few minutes, it appears that our emulator has fully loaded. As we can see, it looks like an Android lock screen. If we move this, mocking a finger movement on our screen, we can see that our application, which I randomly picked as another application that I'd written a tutorial about, is now on the screen and behaves just like it would on a phone. The emulator is a little slow, as I've stated before, and there are alternatives that we can use that will speed up development. But rather than having to reload the emulator every time, we can keep this and keep loading other projects on this emulator, so we don't have to go through the long loading period we had to when we were setting the emulator up.